the right part of the law is enforcement
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Well, hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck Program and to The Blaze. This is the network that you are building. The biggest problem America faces today is not the debt. It's not high gas prices or sequester. It is something far bigger than that. It's called right and wrong, good and evil. I can't believe the world we live in now, where people don't know the difference between the two anymore. Large sodas and trans fats are banned, while late-term abortions are championed. Good and evil, right and wrong. Capitalism, something that has pulled more people out of poverty, characterized now as evil and heartless. Those who want to spend less and bring down our debt so our children are not saddled in slavery, they're also called evil and heartless. Yet the big government spenders, those who want to saddle us with debt that they know we can never repay, those who designed it, people like Paul Krugman, they can actually call people like me liars when I say, you guys, we can't pay for this. And in the end, you're going to have to raise taxes. In the end, you're going to have death panels. They're deemed as genius, even though now we have somebody, Paul Krugman, one of the designers, saying those very things. Watch this.
There is this question, how are we going to pay for the programs? The year 2025, the year 2030, is something is going to have to give. And probably in the end, surely in the end, it will require some middle class taxes as well. And we're also going to have to make decisions about health care. Not pay for health care that has no demonstrated medical benefits. And so, the snarky version I use, which is, I shouldn't even say it gets me in trouble, is death panels and sales taxes is how we do this. But it's not that far in reach.
Death panels and taxes is how we will do this. We're the bad guys, you and me, because we said that's what's going to happen. Here he is saying it, and he's still the good guy. Do you remember Romney with the whole 47% thing, where they took a hidden camera and they played it over and over and over again? Here's one of the architects of what we're doing, talking, using the same language and saying, I shouldn't say this because I'm going to get in trouble, using the language death panels, and no one is covering it because he's a good guy. Right and wrong, good and evil, we don't know the difference anymore. People who believe in small government, Tea Partiers, we're having a war on women or a war on race. A war on women. Meanwhile, this is a guy in Colorado. Democrats in Colorado say that guns are not the answer when you want to defend yourself, and they're telling women on college campuses to vomit, or I'm not kidding you, whistle if you see a rapist. I'm sorry, but does any dad ever say that to their kids? If my daughter is afraid of being raped, I say, go to the shooting range and learn how to shoot a gun. Right and wrong, good and evil. The police acted stupidly. Remember that? The police acted stupidly, yet cop killers like Chris Dorner are glorified. Millions of law-abiding, gun-owning citizens are treated as criminals and are being told right now to disarm. While at the same time that's happening, law enforcers are being told they could lose their jobs, and many in progressive cities like Detroit have lost their jobs. They don't have any guns to protect themselves. So what's going to happen to them? The lines between right and wrong have been blurred. No, they haven't been blurred. They've been erased. And I am afraid that we are going cold inside. Bill O'Reilly is going to be on the show tonight, as is Dr. James Dobson. And wait until you hear what they have to say. I want to show you a very clear example. Now, this is happening in Dallas, Texas. If it's happening in Dallas, it can happen anywhere. A 33-year-old career criminal who had been in and out of jail since 2003. He's got an 18-page rap sheet. Arrested half a dozen times on theft. Well, he was at it again on Monday. He was trying to break into a home of a guy who was living in not a very good neighborhood. He was an elderly man. He was all alone by himself. I want you to think of your mom or dad at home alone. And then somebody making a racket, trying to get into their first floor window. And your mom or dad hears the commotion, and they grab their gun, and they go to look. Now, here's your elderly father seeing a very large man trying to break into the house and actually pulling himself into the house. What do you want your parent to do? Do you want your elderly grandmother or grandfather, or your mother or father, to stand there and warn him and hold him at bay? Or do you want them to shoot? I want them to shoot. The elderly man in this case here in Texas fired at him. The intruder, Deaf Fawn Pipkins, died. His body remained slumped halfway into the window, halfway out of the window until police arrived on the scene, but all confirming the homeowner's story. Common sense would indicate that the homeowner, not knowing the intent of a man trying to break into his home, and, you know, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out what he was doing. At best, he was going to steal from him. Common sense would tell you that man was more than justified in defending himself. Texas law, the Castle Doctrine, also protects homeowners by stating that the homeowner doesn't have to retreat, doesn't have to do anything, can shoot if somebody breaks into your home. Clear-cut case, especially in Texas, you would think. But listen to the privileged underclass now and the poor criminal. Listen to what the family had to say when they showed up on the scene.
He could have gave him a warning, that he could have let him know that he did have a gun on his property and that he was willing to use it in self-defense. The man that did this, may God bless his soul, may he be okay with this in his mind for killing a person, taking a human being's life, because everybody deserves a chance.
Okay, that was the sister-in-law and the ex-girlfriend. Everybody deserves a second chance. Well, that is true, especially in America. Everybody should have a second chance. May I remind you of the 18 pages of rap sheet. He failed to give the intruder a proper warning before he shot. Well, how insensitive of him, especially since the intruder stood out on the man's lawn and yelled out, "Hey, I'm going to be breaking in your window in a few minutes. I won't hurt you. I'm just going to steal your stuff." He didn't do that. He does not deserve a second chance after second chance after second chance. You don't deserve a second chance if you break into my house. Judging by his rap sheet, he's had plenty of chances. And while it's tragic, this man's death is the fault of one person and one person alone, him. He chose to tempt fate one too many times. That's what happens when you break into people's houses. Despite knowing his history, the immediate reaction was to blame the homeowner. Well, let me ask you what would have happened to the old guy had he not had a gun. This is in Texas, by the way. What is it like in your state? This is what happens when there is no right and wrong based on solid foundations. When there's no foundation of stone, the structure crumbles, and we are being pitted against each other. In fact, they're driving a wedge between us, and the gap is only going to get wider unless we find things that we have in common. Sense used to be that. Principles and values and decency used to be that. Hard work used to be that. Since New York State enacted even stricter gun laws in January, several gun manufacturers now have sent along a strong message. If local and state governments choose to restrict the ability of citizens to own guns, they're not going to sell guns to any New York State government entity. They don't want to sell a gun to a government agency so those weapons can be used against the public that's not allowed to arm itself. You have a right to defend yourself. By the way, we put this up on the Blaze. I want to put it up here. This is a list of the gun manufacturers doing the very same thing. The big three arms manufacturers, SIG, Smith & Wesson, and Glock, have decided that they're not joining in yet. But in 2 weeks, 18 companies have joined, and this list just keeps on growing. Just like the sheriffs we had on last night, these gun companies are getting severe heat. And our media and our president and everybody else will try to destroy them, ruin their credibility. They will probably come under investigation and everything else, which forces us to take sides. Who is right and who is wrong? What is good? What is evil? You know, when you live in a culture where video games don't show good and evil, where it doesn't matter, it's just about killing. It's just about winning, like it is in Wall Street. Just win. Don't matter if it's right or wrong. You live in a culture where one side is standing up for individual rights and the other is now trying to take them away because it's collective rights. The lines have been erased. Let me tell you a story about Evan Todd. He tried to make it as clear as possible. He wrote a letter to Barack Obama, and in it he outlined why he vehemently disagrees with the president on gun control. Now, imagine, how many letters does a president see? Well, he sees a lot, and he always talks about them, but this one he's not going to talk about. This one stands out. Not just because what's in it, but because of who the author is and what he's been through. We don't know Evan, but we know the event that he was a part of. On April 20th, 1999, Evan Todd was in the school library studying. He was 15 years old and attending Columbine High School. He was the very first student shot in the library, and he saw 12 of his friends and classmates violently lose their lives during one of the worst school massacres in history. 5 years prior to the massacre, let's remember, the federal government enacted an assault weapons ban. Evan wrote to President Obama, the assault weapons ban didn't deter these two murderers, nor did the other 30-something laws that they broke. The letter is detailed and outlines many of the problems with the president's proposed executive orders and renewal of the '94 assault weapons ban. Evan takes issue with almost everything from universal background checks to assault weapons to magazine limits, and concludes, why, Mr. President, would you prefer criminals to have the ability to outgun law-abiding citizens? Just whose side are you on? It is a very good question. Whose side are you on? Right and wrong, common sense, good and evil. They strongly indicate what side freedom is on. I wanted to put Evan on the show tonight. He published this letter exclusively on The Blaze yesterday, and he just began doing interviews. And I think it is interesting to watch the media now, because the media has a very clear line, and they always have. You do not badmouth trauma victims. But let's see how long this lasts with the media that sides with the progressive agenda. Evan Todd, Columbine High School shooting survivor, who penned the letter to Barack Obama. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Can you tell me, how can I ask this? Sandy Hook felt horrible to all of us, but we didn't go through what you did. What was the day of Sandy Hook shooting like for you?
It's like living it all over again. The same feelings that I had going through the day that Columbine happened. It's the same exact thing. Watching it unfold, it's the fear, the not knowing what's going to happen, the helplessness, and just watching it unfold and knowing that there'll be innocent lives that are killed.
The killers at Columbine didn't kill you, obviously. No. Why? How did you convince them?
Well, when they came up to me, they asked, why shouldn't we kill you? And I told them I've been good to you and everyone in this school, and you know it. And at that point, Dylan was down close to me, pointing a gun at my head, and he slowly got up, took a step back, and his facial expression actually changed and decided to let me live. He told Eric, "You can kill him if you want," but Eric didn't do anything, and they left.
Today we have, we're going to talk with Bill O'Reilly and Dr. Dobson about the lack of concern for life and this deadening of our society. You are concerned about this. Why? What are you seeing, and what do you think it is?
Well, that was one of my first reactions after Columbine, you know, immediately, was how can somebody do this? How can somebody go into a school and viciously murder innocent people? And just a lack of respect for life. And then I wondered, where did that come from? And it was evident that it came from our culture and what is put out there in our culture, and everything from the video games to even abortion plays a huge subconscious factor in the value of human life.
You're a very brave person, because you say this kind of stuff on, you know, I think you're on with Anderson Cooper, who actually is a decent guy. I like Anderson, but you're on with him tonight, and God forbid you go on Piers Morgan. They're going to hammer you. They're going to hammer you. You're a kook for saying that.
What, that human life is precious?
Oh, no, that it's the video games and abortion.
Well, you know, those aren't definitively, I don't think that's the entire reason things like this happen, obviously.
Right.
But those definitely play a factor.
So when you saw the president snap into action right away and start blaming it on guns, when did you decide to write the letter? When did you know you had to write this letter?
Well, it was actually, it had been building up. I was trying to find a way to share my message, and opportunity you know, presented itself, and that's when I went with it. But it was something that just over and over, time and time again, these tragedies happen, and it's sickening that they jumped straight into the gun debate. And instead, the very first thing we need to do is protect human life and defend it, and allow people, well, not even allow, it's their right to defend their life.
And is there anything in particular that sticks out to you that that you see in all the gun control stuff that's happening, that you say, this is nuts? Well,
yeah, point by point, the initiatives that Obama put forward, it clearly hinders the average American citizen from protecting themselves. It makes it harder to get a gun. It makes it more expensive to get a gun. It makes it, you know, with the magazines limit, it makes it less valuable to have a gun with a larger capacity. All these things hinder an American citizen from protecting themselves. At the same time, it enables criminals on the other side. People will say that, because I've heard it, and it's crazy, but people say to me, and I've heard it on television, you know what? When they have to reload, that's when you take a ballpoint pen and get them. You're in a school, you were in a lunchroom, or you were in the library. Why didn't you hit them over the head with a book? Or why didn't you hit them over the head with a lamp, or get them with a pen while they reloaded? Well, that was the little known fact that I don't share about my story, is the reason I was standing up when Eric and Dylan came through that front door is I had a feeling that either one, if they came around a corner, I'd try and do something, or two, I'd run. And the fact is, when it comes down to it, and you're in a unilateral firefight, you stand no chance against a weapon. No, but you wait until they have to reload. That's what the media will tell you. You wait until they have to reload, and then you get them. It's bizarre. Okay. Thank you so much for speaking out, and I appreciate what you must have gone through in the last month or so, and I can't imagine it, but I appreciate you standing up and defending everybody's right to defend themselves. Did you
before we go, did you have an epiphany on this? Have you always been somebody, even as a kid, did you grow up with guns, or did something change in you?
No, nothing really changed in me. I grew up in the Boy Scouts, shooting BB guns and .22s, and then I went through NRA, certification. Sure. Moved on to shotguns, and I was around them all the time. And it's something that was taught that these are lethal weapons that need to have a healthy respect for and used properly, and on the gun side. And so I've really had the same opinions, even though I wasn't in the gun debate realm before Columbine. I didn't even know what the gun debate was. You a religious guy? Yeah. I just wanted, you kind of speak like you are. I didn't know if you were or not. I don't mean that as a slam, obviously, but right. You sound like a religious guy who believes in God. Yes, sir. God bless you. I believe in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. Thank you so much, Evan. Appreciate it. God bless you. Thank you. You bet. God bless. I just remember when he said that, I reminded of that interview. What was it on? Was it on CNN where they started doing scriptures and the person started breaking out in sweat, and they're like, no, God, people, this is crazy. And they couldn't cut away fast enough. It was MSNBC this week. They couldn't cut away fast enough. And I remember the first time that I ever talked about God on television, it made me sweat because I knew what people upstairs were thinking about it. And it's too bad, because that's what stops us from defining good or evil. Back in a minute.
And now, an exclusive preview of the wonderful world of Stu.
This is all going to be to scale. I hope you know that. And how do I know that? Well, first of all, I buy a lot of drugs.
The consensus is that Hillary has brought the sexy back.
I'm happy to slit your wrist for you.
Oh, wonderful.
A method for producing spider silk has been developed by genetic engineers.
Almighty God, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Thank you. No, I don't have any more time. Leave me alone. I just want to go home.
This has been an exclusive preview of the wonderful world of Stu. Tune in Saturday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
I mean, how things get on this network, I have no idea. We're talking a little bit about the difference between good and evil and our lack of being able to see it, and the culture that is coming, which is a coldness in our children's hearts and a willingness to turn grandma and grandpa off because we can't pay for it anymore, as we showed you with the Paul Krugman video just a little while ago. Birth rates are declining. People are living longer. And we are becoming a culture that no longer values life. The lines of right and wrong erased. That doesn't sound like a good recipe. What we have to do is teach compassion and love. It's what we did with Restoring Love over the last summer. And Dr. James Dobson is the author of a new novel called Fatherless. He is also the president and founder of Family Talk, an education and media organization designed to strengthen the family. And I will tell you that he is a good friend that I haven't seen in quite some time. Mm-hmm. Last time I saw you, we were sitting in Washington, D.C., a group full. I asked somebody to see if they could get the most powerful leaders of spiritual leaders in the country together. And you were in the corner, and you gave such an eloquent speech on right and wrong and having to stand when I was asking for help on putting Restoring Honor together in Washington, D.C. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Glenn. I congratulate you on what's happening in the internet and the Blaze.
Thank you.
You're just doing a great job. But that evening that you talked about when we had dinner together is absolutely videotaped in my mind.
Mine too.
I remember most of what you said to us that day, and I agreed with all of it.
I don't, but I remember. It's weird because what you said, I remember vividly, and you were a strong and passionate man standing on God's side. You really were amazing. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Fatherless, because you're taking this to a different angle. We just played Paul Krugman a minute ago, and he was talking about there's going to come a time where we're just not going to be able to afford health care, and so we're just going to have to unplug people. If there's no benefit to society, there's just no benefit, and they'll go. And you know, we could talk about all the stats and everything about how the birth rates are going to kill us in the end, but you instead wrote a novel to try to get this across to people. Tell me about it.
Well, I co-authored it with Kurt Bruner, who is a brilliant young man, and it's actually a trilogy of 3 books. The first one's out, the second one comes out this fall, and the third one next year. But they're titled Fatherless, Childless, and Godless, and they really have to do with the inversion of the pyramid, with the greatest number of people who are older and the younger number of people are represented at the pinnacle. And that changes everything. That has implications for us politically, economically, socially, spiritually. It touches every dimension of life. And this is a story about the year 2042 and 2043 and what the world will look like if these trends continue.
Okay, why are we because I think we are a society that doesn't have children anymore because we're more of a me-centered society, and we have things we want to do.
Yeah.
And children are great, but they get into the way of what I want to do. Would you say that's?
Absolutely, and I don't mean to be disparaging to people, because they can do what they want.
Sure, yeah.
But there's something wrong with a concept when an increasing percentage of couples don't want the trouble of raising children. And it's not only happening here, Glenn, it's happening all over the world. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
With the Western world.
Well, it's not just Western. China's birth rate is just plummeting.
Yeah, but China is, I mean, China, they've been taught by the government.
Absolutely.
Will kill your
One
children.
child
Right.
policy. But Japan is now the oldest average age on Earth. And last year, this is incredible, last year they sold more diapers to the elderly than to parents of babies. Wow. The whole culture is turned over.
Japan, though, isn't as bad as what we could become, because we don't want to see our parents when they get old. Yeah. We're a society. Japan takes care and still respects the elderly, where we are a society that has decided, you know what, let's put them in a home or whatever. And I remember reading when we were debating healthcare, there was an op-ed where the line in the op-ed was, "Move over, Grandma. I want my turn at healthcare." And I thought, who would say that?
Yeah. Well, there's even another dimension to it than that, because in the 1980s, Dr. C. Everett Koop and I had a conversation about this. He saw it coming. He was the Surgeon General under Ronald Reagan. And he said at that time, we're coming to a time when what's called the sandwich generation, those in their 40s, early 50s, will be under a lot of pressure, because their older parents are not going to be able to be supported medically and other ways. And at the same time, their children want to go to college and have a hope. And there's going to be tremendous pressure on the sandwich generation to check out early. We call it in the book transition, where we have Planned Parenthood clinics all over the country with regard to the unborn. There will be clinics where you can die with dignity and do a loving thing. Get out of the way and give the resources to those who need it more.
You know, as crazy as this sounds, it's been done almost exactly like that before. I mean,
yes.
In World War II, it was the compassionate thing to kill people, because we have to support those on the front lines. We have to make the master race. I mean, we've done it before.
We have. There's never been a time, however, when more women were single than those who are married. And then the falling birth rate is such, we're down to 1.9 now. So if it were not for immigration, we would we'd be falling, we'd be declining. When the birth rate declines like that, it affects everything. And that's where we're headed. And this story, as it unfolds over these 3 novels, describes a time when the politicians are under great pressure because they can't provide medical care for the aged, and they are looking for a solution, and that solution is to lessen the population and urge transitions.
Robespierre, that was his solution for joblessness: shoot the old people and the people that can't work,
or guillotine them.
Yeah. Okay, back in just a second. And Bill O'Reilly's coming up too. We're just sitting here and we're talking about, I remember doing an interview with William Shatner, and he talked about the population bomb. And he said, the Earth still has too many people.
You know, Glenn, I think the majority of Americans still believe that. There was the book by that title, Population Bomb. It was written by Paul Ehrlich, and that was a bestseller, if not the #1 bestseller. And it predicted a time very quickly when the Earth would not be able to feed all of the people that are coming on the Earth. That just this overrun of human beings. And I thought that was an interesting idea. I was in graduate school at the time. I was hearing about it. So I bought the book, The Population Bomb. My dad was a reader. He'd read 8 or 10 books a weekend and summarize them for me. We were partners in that regard. And so I bought him that book for Christmas and gave it to him. It's the only book of that type that I ever gave him that he would not accept. He turned around after he opened it, turned around and gave it back to me. He said, "That's wrong. That is dead wrong. That is not going to happen. It's the other way around." And he was dead right about that. Ehrlich now is totally discredited.
Oh, he and his, our science czar, I think, was an editor of that book, John Holdren. He was at least doing, Ehrlich and Holdren did a lot of stuff, and they later went on to talk about, poisoning the drinking water or putting sterilants in the drinking water to stop it.
But it's still with us.
I know.
People still believe that.
Still believe it.
And it is not true.
So what do we do? Let me shift gears here, and I've got about 2 minutes. Let me shift gears to the hardness of people's hearts. Because when just the hardness of hearts of having children and getting married, or looking at life as sacred, how do we change that?
Well, in the first place, that's a spiritual issue. And, I have these very strong Christian beliefs, and the Scripture lays it out for me. And I just feel like that our falling interest in spiritual commitment is related to this different attitude toward human life. We're not only talking about abortion, we're talking about infanticide, we're talking about euthanasia, and all of that is becoming acceptable. Well, we're going to redefine life, and that's what we talk about in this book.
Thank you so much. It is good to see you.
You're a good man, Glenn.
Thank you. Likewise. Okay, the book that changed everything, according to Abraham Lincoln, was Uncle Tom's Cabin. Am I?
It caused a civil war, according to Lincoln.
Lincoln, yeah. This, many believe, is this. This will wake people up and show them that we have a serious problem with our families and lack thereof, if you will. Fatherless by Dr. James Dobson. Back in a minute.
Thank you, Glenn.
Hello, Bill. How are you?
Okay, Beck, how you doing down there in Texas?
Better than you are in New York. I'm just looking at all of the things that you can't do in New York. You can't have salt. You can't have a big soda, or at least a soda, too big for your big-headed mayor up there. Can't have styrofoam foam cups. Can't have formula-fed babies. Can't have any kind of weapons in the city at all. Let me start with the weapons before I get the new thing that you can do in New York. What do you think? What do you think their end game is with weapons all across the country, Bill?
Well, I think that as far as the big urban centers like New York City, where you have 16 million people packed into a little area, I understand they want to make it very hard for people to traffic in weapons. It's a different situation than what you have down in Texas or in Idaho or in Wyoming, whatever. So I don't mind the states passing laws that they believe are going to be helpful in public safety. I don't mind that. I don't want a national law passed by the federal government. I think the states should decide the issue, and all gun crime should be federalized to make it easier to take the gun thugs off the street.
Okay, that wasn't the question, but that was a good answer.
All right, restate the question.
It was a fantastic
some of your questions are so intellectual.
My question was, what do you think the end game is? Because we had this
The end game is to control gun crime. That's what Bloomberg wants to do in New York. And that's why he wants to make it tough to get guns in the city.
What do you think the end game for this administration is?
On gun control? Mm-hmm. Well, they don't want to solve the problem, because if they did, they'd federalize the gun crimes and make it, very difficult for people to traffic in guns.
Would you agree with me? Because we had this argument of, I don't know, 2 years ago. I said they're going to come, they're going to wait for an event, and they're going to come, and they're going to take your gun. And you said that was nonsense.
I don't think they're going to come and take your guns because of the Second Amendment, and I don't think they could overturn that in the Supreme Court.
Okay. I disagree with you, but that's...
Do you think that Obama's going to put forth legislation to confiscate weapons?
One piece at a time, absolutely. One piece at a time. Why do you think
that... He's got 3 years to do that. I don't think he's going to do it. Do you want to make a little bet on that? Can we bet?
Are you limiting him? Are you only limiting him to 2 terms? Because that's an old-fashioned idea.
Oh, he's going to serve another term? He's going to be like Julius Caesar now?
That's an old... He's already Julius Caesar, but that's a different story. So what amazes me here is they're doing it out of compassion, Bill. They want to make sure that we save all the children. And yet, Mario Cuomo, the governor of your state, is now taking the next step to devalue life and saying that you have, or Andrew Cuomo, you now have this next step of being able to have late-term abortions.
It's awful. As I said in the Talking Points memo on the Factor yesterday, Andrew Cuomo is barbaric. He's barbaric. And the fact that he says he's a Roman Catholic is just staggering. I don't know whether your viewers understand what's going on in New York, but they want to legalize late-term abortion for any reason. You got a migraine headache, you got a hangnail, you get a panic attack, and not even a doctor would have to sign off on it. You could go to some nurse or physician's assistant someplace.
Yeah, a nurse practitioner can perform
It's so barbaric that people should be rising up, but you're not going to see it because we're too busy on our video games. We can't pull ourselves away.
Are you concerned? Because I saw your Talking Points memo, and I know you well enough to know this is one thing that really sits wrong with you, as it does with me. You are concerned with the value of life. We are cheapening it at both ends. And then we're also demonizing people. I mean, we're going down, the progressives are going down the same road they did with Margaret Sanger on groups of people. You don't have a quality of life, or you can't really explain yourself. So what good are you to the collective?
Well, look, I'm not going to generalize about anything other than late-term abortion at this point, because
you don't think we're cheating? Wait. I believe I've heard on your program that you believe it's barbaric, not only what we're doing to the newborn or late-term abortions, but also what we're doing to the elderly in this country.
Awful. It's terrible. I mean, we warehouse these people. We want to get them out of our sight. And it's all about us. It's not about Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo has not, he comes right into your face and says, I don't care about kids. We don't have Jessica's Law here in New York State. Andrew Cuomo says, I don't care. He couldn't yell it any louder. And he's got a 59% approval rating in New York State. It's us.
What is it?
We're turning into barbarians, we Americans. We don't care.
What would it take? This is so frightening. We've both done the story on the USDA. And these, I mean, I would have gotten up. There's no job worth it. I would have gotten up and walked out of that room.
Oh, sure.
Nobody did.
I mean, those lemmings are, you know.
Correct.
But this is what I mean. It's going to take a disaster now, economically probably, to turn the people's attention away from their narcissism. All right? It's not that Americans are bad people. They're just apathetic.
May I go the other direction? It was after a period of about 10 years of apathy and ugliness that, and indoctrination, that once the crash came in the Weimar Republic, it turned the people even darker. Do you think we have a possibility of not waking up?
No, I don't see that at all here. I think it's the machines basically, the people are becoming addicted to the machines. It takes them away from the community. So their interest in the community, their local schools, what happens in their hospitals, what happens to pregnant women, diminishes. And all they want to do is spend time with the tweeting and on the phone, and so that we're becoming an insular society, which allows people like Cuomo and the other villains to get away with all this garbage.
I believe we have a record here. Bill and I agree on more than one topic, except for the gun thing. But this is what he's saying right here is a quintessential point. It is what I've been talking about with the coming of the singularity, the coming of the disassociation with anything that is real. We're living in a virtual world. And I mean, the one thing we do disagree on besides guns is you think we might be pulled back from that. I think if we don't actively engage and actively try to get people to wake up, we're not going to wake them up when it comes time.
Well, I mean, sure, and that's why I do my program. That's why you do your program. But the people who we need to reach are the people who aren't paying attention. They're not locked into cable news or talk radio or on the internet or whatever. And the only way you're going to reach them is if they feel their existence is then going to be harmed. Right.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's going to do that is if the economy gets even worse. So we need leadership. We need people pounding the drum. But to get their attention, very hard.
Unless you can convince them that it is that group over there that did it to them. And then they don't wake up. They just follow that leader to go make their pain go away because of those people. Bill, I want to give you a real quick shout out. Not a lot of people know that you're also an author. He wrote the book.
Not a lot of other people know that.
Not a lot of people know this, but he did something, and now it's going to be on TV. And you had me up until Tom Hanks was in it. I can't believe somehow or another Tom Hanks is doing it, but congratulations, Bill.
Yeah, Killing Lincoln was a record-breaking movie for National Geographic. It'll be on Saturday. They're going to rerun it again. And I appreciate the mention, Beck.
You bet. It
nice being on with you.
It is well worth the read, and I might watch it, Bill. I'm not saying, but I might watch it. Thanks a lot, Bill O'Reilly.
And now, an exclusive preview of the wonderful world of Stu.
This is all going to be to scale. I hope you know that. And how do I know that? Well, first of all, I buy a lot of drugs.
The consensus is that Hillary has brought the sexy back.
I'm happy to slit your wrist for you.
Oh, wonderful.
A method for producing spider silk has been developed by genetic engineers.
Almighty God, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Thank you. No, I don't have any more time. Leave me alone. I just want to go home.
This has been an exclusive preview of the wonderful world of Stu. Tune in Saturday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
Tomorrow we'll talk about anything you want to talk about on this broadcast. Until then, from Dallas, good night, America.